Tomorrow morning we have...
From Jeff Morrow. He's been stationed there in the Outer Banks, and he's still in the Buxton area. Jeff, things have settled down now. Are people starting to return home, or is it too early to really start coming back?
I think it's still a little bit, it's been a long day.
I bet it has.
It has. It's still maybe a little bit too early for folks to start coming back. I'm sure that the local emergency management people here in Dare County and other counties in eastern North Carolina will reassess the situation once the sun comes up tomorrow, and then make a decision on lifting perhaps some of the mandatory evacuations that had been up here. I know a lot of the local business owners would think the sooner the better, and really Hatteras Island has not sustained any major damage, and I'm sure that a lot of vacationers will be calling and saying, you know, when can we come down and resume our vacation, or maybe start our vacation? Has there been a lot of damage? And I can pretty much safely say, for at least Hatteras Island here, aside from the overwash down by Hatteras Village, I think this island escaped pretty well from the wrath of what has turned out to be quite a hurricane.
Jeff, do you think that has the wind decreased enough so if it shifts around more to the southwest or west that it'll avoid too much flooding coming in from the sound?
Well, I'm hopeful of that. We won't know probably until later on tonight or tomorrow morning. I can tell you that a lot of water drained out of this side of Pamlico Sound with all those southerly winds that just literally pushed all the water, as you and Brad were mentioning, up into some of those rivers like the Pamlico River and on up into Albemarle Sound, and that has to come back eventually. Just like in a bathtub, the water will slosh back and forth, and that will come sloshing back this way, hopefully not with too much force, and we won't get too much in the way of flooding. I don't think that will happen, but there may be a little bit of flooding on this end when it comes back.
All right, thanks a lot, Jeff. Every time we look at you, you're looking drier and drier.
Actually, I changed, Brad.
Oh,
so
okay,
I was
it.
a little bit soaked there. I had to dry out a little bit.
Okay, we're looking good there, hang in there, and the worst is over, certainly for the Outer Banks. And as we look further into the future, we're looking at a lot of heavy rainfall here and the possibility of some severe weather also. Anytime you have a landfalling hurricane, you could have tornadoes. We've had some tornadoes at Newport and near New Bern, even the Raleigh-Durham area, and we're still monitoring the radars very closely in these areas. Thunderstorms are moving on into Baltimore, D.C., Richmond. Of course, any of these squalls can produce tornadoes, gusty winds, and heavy rainfall. And Matt, this rain is going to be a big problem, isn't it?
That's right. One good thing, though, is that you notice that there's not a lot of heavy rain coming up against the lee of the Appalachians. Earlier, I was kind of worried that if the storm went a little bit further to the west, we might see some heavy rain upsloping, coming up the mountains there, and that could have caused some really devastating flooding. We've seen that happen with hurricanes in the past, like Camille, but right now it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Hopefully, that'll keep coming true. Here's our rainfall estimate. As you can see, we've had up to the little yellow spot here up near Norfolk is around 2 inches, and that's really expanded. And we've had reports of up to 5 to 6 inches around the Cherry Point area, which is right in here, and unofficial reports perhaps as much as 10 inches. And that kind of report, unfortunately, might happen a little bit further up the coast.
That's right. Those yellow areas are 3 inches or more, so there's going to be some flooding. Flood watches all the way up through eastern New York into Vermont because the rainfall is going to be very heavy. The winds will die down, but the rains will still be very heavy right through Saturday night. So we're going to have our hands full with the system for at least half the weekend. All right, well, thanks a lot for tuning in. We've got your forecast coming up, and we'll take a look at that right now.
All right, Brad, thank you very much. We appreciate that report. There are several tornado warnings in effect right now
in Virginia and in North Carolina. And we do want to tell you that all of the forecasts here, the forecast positions, that is, of the hurricane. Off the printer, the latest advisory on Hurricane Bertha from the National Hurricane Center. And so disregard most of this because it's changed. I guess you'll kind of have to listen to me for a second if you're plotting. Basically, the center is about here, and the hurricane force winds, that is 74 miles an hour or greater, shown here in orange, are generally east of the center. They extend east of the center about 100 miles, but the tropical storm force winds extend about 2 times that distance, about 200 miles east of the center, and a little bit less than that west of the center. Well, with all these winds piling up the waters along the coast, you know about the storm surge. The center, somewhere in here, and you notice where is all the deep convection? It's all to the east, basically, of the center at this point. So portions of northeastern North Carolina and almost into the Tidewater area of Virginia, the squalliest weather, not sure if that's a word, but the strongest thunderstorms will be in that area. And we do in Surry County and in the Isle of Wight County in Virginia. We have tornado warnings for both of these counties because of the hurricane force winds coming on in, the friction by the land, and of course we've got enough turn in the atmosphere to produce tornadoes as always with landfalling hurricanes. So the center somewhere in here, this is where you saw that convection on the satellite picture, all north and east of the center, the heaviest rains, and the feeder bands, thankfully, the ones probably producing very heavy winds, are off the shore. Here's Cape Hatteras, it's all east of the Barrier Islands. So some good news there. That would put out a lot more rain. Tornado watch is in effect, of course, because of the heavier rain bands. You can see these feeder bands now into Virginia, and that's some pretty squally weather from Richmond to Norfolk to the Virginia Beach area. A lot of problems here with heavy thunderstorms. Meanwhile, Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, you're in the clear now. Cloudy weather, but the rain is all to the north of you. We'll take you traveling coming up.
What is the Home Depot's low price?
Rains across the mid-Atlantic coastline. The dark green indicating what else but coastal flood watches since our hurricane is crawling to the north-northeast. Actually, it's picked up speed. The crawling would not be an appropriate adjective there. What we find are also our flash flood watches extending into northern portions of North Carolina. Heavy rains in excess of 4 inches expected in some areas. Rainy weather also Mississippi and Alabama through early tomorrow morning, and flooding of a Walmart in Douglas County. Oh boy. All right, so severe thunderstorms expected around a hurricane. Also north of Chicago to Milwaukee, the possibility of severe thunderstorms overnight. 2